This is Big Podcast.
All right, there we go. David Hooper here, Build a Big Podcast, the marketing podcast for podcasters. I've successfully re-engaged compression, enhancer, expander gate, double preamps, well, triple. I got a cloud lifter, the DBX 286S, and then Focusrite Scarlett. That is because I'm voicing the audiobook version of my new book. It is coming in June. It is 101 podcast episode templates. And it sounds like a long blog article. It is not. It is about 30-something thousand words. So it's quick, but it's thorough with 101 ways, actually 102, but that didn't sound as cool on the cover. 102 ways for you to have compelling podcast episodes. If you're interested in that, it's 99 cents on Amazon right now. Just go search for it. 101 podcast episode templates. The audiobook is coming soon. I think what I'm going to do is package the thing because it works as an audiobook. It's better in print, Kindle or paperback. Again, 99 cents for it. Go search on Amazon, 101 podcast episode templates. It looks like the last book, but it's kind of a teal and black. So you'll know it when you see it. Bigpodcast.com, that's the website. That is what I help you do, what I'm talking about. Grow your audience, have a more compelling episode. This is the audio version of the newsletter that goes out every week. It is called Big Podcast Insider. You see a theme? It's all at bigpodcast.com. Get the newsletter. That's where all the links are. But I'm going to go ahead and go into it because I've got some additional commentary from the last issue. I call this two kinds of podcast ripoffs. Issue 70 talked about the changing market of content distribution, including how it affects us as podcasters. Let me give you an example that breaks this down that even your own grandmother could understand. 2004, remember that? Way back, almost 20 years ago, there were over 9,000 Blockbuster stores, the video rental place. Today, only one. It's in Bend, Oregon. There's a documentary on Netflix. It's called The Last Blockbuster. It's a fascinating story because it is about how media and how we consume media, how that changes. These are the big lessons. These apply to you as a podcaster. One, media changes. What we find interesting now may not be what we find interesting in the future because culture changes. There's always a market for something if it's big enough, but what's on top now, it's not always going to be on top. You have to understand that. You have to get comfortable with that. I've seen a lot of guys, and I've certainly been there, music, books, and otherwise, where you think you finally have it figured out. Hey, man, everything's going great. Got it figured out. Well, the world is changing. And if you don't change with the world, this is why it's important to stay on top of things, continuously reinvent yourself, keep an ear to the street, talk to the people who are listening to your podcast. Here's a second thing to remember. This applies to blockbusters. If you remember going into a blockbuster, when it comes to media, people are missing personal connection with others. These days, whether it is Netflix or Amazon or Apple Podcasts, the recommendations that we get are based on a computer. The book that I mentioned at the very beginning of this episode, 101 podcast episode templates, if you go look at that book on Amazon, you'll also see a section of the page that says people who bought this book also bought these books. People who looked at this book also looked at these books. That's a computer recommendation. And that's great. That's amazing because they've got a lot of data on us and they know basically if we like certain things and other people have liked certain things and those other people have liked certain other things, we are likely to like those other things as well. But compare that to a personal conversation you might have with somebody at a video store or at a record store, somebody who's a true fan. You could tell he's a true believer, way into podcasting. And he says, this mic is the best. This book on podcasting is the best. It's different. You're going to see and hear that enthusiasm. You're going to take that a little more seriously than you would a computer recommendation, especially if that person that you're listening to is your friend who knows what you like. Trust me on this, man. You got to check this thing out. It worked for me, and I know it's going to work for you because I've seen your setup. That's how I've ended up with a lot of the stuff that I've got in this room. Third big idea here, outlasting everybody else. It's what makes you legendary. Let's go back to the last Blockbuster, the real last Blockbuster, the one in Bend, Oregon. People are going out of their way to do business with this place. And because of that, it's getting 1,000 times more media attention than it ever would have otherwise. I guarantee you, back in the day when there were 9,000 Blockbuster stores, there was not one of them getting as much media attention back then as the last Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon does today. It's interesting, and people have no other options. If you've got what they want, you are the only place to go to. Think about that with your podcast. So many people, they get into podcasting. They go, I'm going to talk to exciting entrepreneurs, or I'm going to talk about Bitcoin. They do what we call play in traffic. There's a huge market, weight loss, health, Bitcoin, sex, whatever. And they think if I can only get 0.01% of that market, that's going to be a bajillion people and I'm going to be rich. You've seen that on Shark Tank, right? They go to the sharks and they say, well, there's 7 billion people in the world. And if we can only get 0.0000001 of them, we're all going to be millionaires because of this. That's one way to think about it. But what are you going to do? Go target 7 billion people? No, you target very specific people. That's how podcasting works. This is not radio. If you can set yourself up to be the only one and then find out where the people who like what you've got are, you're going to have a winner. There are way too many ripoffs in podcasting, both literally and figuratively. I've got a story of an alleged ripoff that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But this is something else for you to consider when you're thinking about those big markets that you're getting into, the Bitcoins, sex, diet. We don't need another one. We need your version of something very specific, your personality. That is what gets people excited. Will it take off? Maybe. Sometimes they do. But I'm not going to take that bet. Sometimes people win the lottery. You can't win if you don't play. So you've got to play. Somebody's going to win. But those odds are very, very small. I would rather have something consistent that keeps bringing in money than something that I'm taking a huge bet on, hoping there's going to be a big payoff down the road. You do you. You want to do that big audience? Go for it. There's an opportunity for you. But I'd rather have that small, super enthusiastic audience, be able to connect with them, really work with them, really change lives, make impact, than something big where somebody's like, take it or leave it. Because that's what you get when you go for a bigger audience of the 7 billion people and try to go for 0.000000001 of those people. Those guys aren't enthusiastic. I want the enthusiastic people. I got an opportunity for you. This is for some people. It may be for you. This is Warner Media. They are looking for upcoming podcasters, and it's a great opportunity for the right person. This is Warner Media Access and Rooster Teeth Digital Creators. They have a program. It provides historically underrepresented digital talent, a platform to break through to new audiences, and also provide the tools and opportunities to succeed as a digital creator. This is a paid mentorship, paid training. Again, it's from Rooster Teeth and Warner Media. It's going to happen over a 3-month period this fall. There's a 1-month residency, meaning that you will go to live in Austin, Texas. Housing is provided. There is a stipend provided. It's an immersive program. It goes way beyond podcasting. You'll be working on professional video sets, sponsor productions, much more. At the end of the 3 months, you've got an opportunity to meet with industry executives from Warner Media. You'll be eligible for a 1-year Rooster Teeth talent contract. So if that sounds good to you, this is where to get the information. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. 3 months, paid internship. You go to Austin, Texas for a month. You get to live with them. You're going to get on set. That's the best thing that you can do. I got people coming through my house all the time because this is where my wife shoots. My wife is a photographer. People want to get into acting. They want to get into modeling. They want to get into whatever. Because a lot of these crews, these company people, makeup folks, these stylists, they work on video sets in addition to photography sets. If a model wants to get into acting, I've heard this question a lot of times. They talk about working on a video set. Model says, how do I get into acting? Well, I'll tell you, go on the set, learn what's happening, figure it out, meet the people. This program is going to let you do that. Not only are you going to learn the stuff, but you're going to make those connections. You're going to see how it works through observation. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com for more information. Free podcast transcription with editing via text. Have you seen Descript? You upload your podcast audio. it pops out an automated transcript. And if you want to edit something out, all you do is highlight the text just like you would in a Word document, hit delete, boom, the audio is removed. Headliner, they've got a free version of this. It's in beta now. That's how I can get you access to it. It's called Eddy. It'll import your audio, gives you that same automated transcription. And like I said, editing those parts out that you don't like, it's as simple as highlighting the word, pressing delete. It is free to use. Jump in, try it for yourself. I've found it to be very helpful on projects like I mentioned at the very beginning of this, doing the voiceover for audiobooks, because I've got a lot of false starts. I'm reading a sentence. I don't like to read. Well, I read the sentence again. I mess up. I'll read the sentence again. Looking at it via text, it makes it easy for me to swipe it out. Whoop, done. I don't have to listen to those 2 or 3 sentences that I mess up on. And believe me, I mess up a lot. This very episode that you're listening to, you know where I am on the ticker? I'm over 16 minutes in right now. Look at the clock and see how much time has passed.
Attention. This is the Big Podcast Supercomputer, doing the math you don't want to do. We are now 11 minutes and 15 seconds into this episode. At this time, approximately 31%, almost 1/3, of the raw audio has been deleted. You're welcome.
Yep, that's edited. This is an easy way to do it. It is free. Maybe it'll work for you. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. How to use podcasts for link building. Podcasts have always been a great way to build links to your site. When a podcast goes out, most of the time, definitely a lot of the time, people will mention you. If you've been a guest, for example, people are going to mention you. They're going to link to you. That podcast goes everywhere. Instant links back to your site. That's great for you. But if you were looking for people to be a guest on your podcast, it is also great for those people. This is one of those ways that you can put people over the edge and say, it really would be a good opportunity to go on this guy's podcast. Think of all the links that we're going to get. Not only are people going to hear our message, but we're going to have dozens of links pointing back to our site. Okay, cool. I'm going to show you how to do that. It's an article I've got linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. It's a great way for you to get more traffic to your podcast. It's a great way for you to get more traffic to these guests that you are interviewing. So let them know about it. You're doing it anyway. It's going to tell you how to sell it to them. Add this to your sales pitch. You're going to be able to get better guests. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Got a deal for you. WordPress hosting for $9.98 a year. Under $10, get you a full year of WordPress hosting. This is not for somebody who is getting tons of traffic. But if you're getting a few thousand downloads per episode and you're getting average traffic, it might work for you. Not a lot of podcast listeners go to the podcast website. However, it is important for you to have a podcast website. This is a cheap way to do it. If you're on HostGator, if you're on Bluehost, one of those types of services, this is equivalent. It's a lot cheaper though. Why is it a lot cheaper? It's not the quality of it. Prices have simply come down. Bluehost, HostGator, they spend a lot of their money on marketing. And all that money that you're paying them, it's not going to the hosting, it's going to marketing. 50 gigabytes on a solid state drive, 2 terabytes of monthly transfer. You can host up to 4 domains, 4 websites, unlimited databases, free SSL certificates, daily backups, cPanel, super easy. And here's the best thing, free migration, $10 a year. I've got it linked, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. If you're getting average traffic, if you've got a site on Bluehost, HostGator, this is a good option for you. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Finally, let's talk about the second type of ripoff. Not just a podcast host copying every other podcast host, thinking because it works for one person, it's going to work for you. Let's talk about plagiarism. I don't have a dog in this fight. Let me be very clear about this, but I want you to be aware of this issue because it might affect you and it might affect how you choose to cover things on your podcast. There is a podcast called Soldier of Misfortune. They have been accused of plagiarism. A journalist for The Atlantic wrote a story that took him 9 years to report. And he says this guy from Soldier of Misfortune copied the whole thing, turned it into a podcast, took credit for it. Again, I don't have a dog in this particular fight, but it is an interesting topic in general, and it's something for us to get clear on for our own podcast. Much of what we consume online, from the photos used in memes, to the rewrites of popular news stories we see on these clickbait sites. A lot of it borrows heavily from unlicensed material. People are fast and loose. They want to get something out. They don't have time to clear it. It happens. This can certainly happen with podcasts. We don't do our research, and that's how bad information gets out, disinformation. You see something, oh my God, I've got to get this out on the podcast. You don't realize that it's not true. You haven't fact-checked it. We've gotten lazy because it's super easy for us to get something out. We used to be a little bit more thorough. We actually had to print something out on paper before we print it out because we're using paper and we only have a limited number of space. We'd have somebody edit it, fact-check it. If you look at NPR, if you look at these big podcast companies, they've got fact checkers. That is a job in the podcast business. They're checking everything because they don't want to get bad information out there. As independent podcasters, we are less likely to have that. It costs money. It takes time. We like to play it fast and loose. We like to get stuff out quickly. Look at this story. Again, I'm not taking sides here. Haven't listened to the podcast. Haven't thought anything about it other than it is a good thing for us to think about as far as the content that we get, repurpose, and spread ourselves. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. That's it for this episode. Thank you for listening. Again, the new book coming out, tracking the audiobook now. And what a relief for me to sit here through this, not having to read a script. I do these going off of bullet points, so you know. I got the main elements that I want to mention, and then I let it rip. That's how I do most of my podcast episodes. Audiobook, different thing. You got to read it word for word. You miss a word, got to go back, read it again. So if you want the perfect read, that is coming. If you want the 101 podcast episode templates, only 99 cents now on pre-order. It is available on Amazon.com. Just search for it. 101 podcast episode templates. You'll know it when you see it. It's black and teal, and it's got my name on it, David Hooper. Hey, if you like the newsletter, you like the podcast, spread the word. Bigpodcast.com hooks you up. You can subscribe to this podcast, never miss an episode while you are there. Subscribe to the newsletter. It goes out every Friday. All the links that I'm talking about, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Thanks for listening and thanks for your support. And I will see you on the next episode of Build the Big Podcast.